Hey guys, before we begin today's episode, I want to let you know that the conversation includes some deeply personal topics from our guest, Andy Campbell, including childhood sexual abuse, cancer, and the heartbreaking loss of a child to suicide. Andy shares his powerful story of survival and healing through the pain and with the help of practices like EMDR, Reiki, meditation, and the steady support of his therapists, physicians, and family. This episode is filled with honesty, courage, and the reminder that healing is possible in many forms. I wanted to remind you guys, if you guys are struggling, please don't carry it alone. There is help and there is hope. You can reach out to NAMI, Kennedy Kids Foundation, or call or text 988. You can also visit 988lifeline.org. Remember, you are not alone, and there's no shame in asking for support. The world is so much better with you in it. Now, with love, let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to Discontinued. Now, we have Andy Campbell joining us today. Andy, thank you so very much for coming on here and sharing your story with us. So I wanted to kind of give the audience a little bit of background about you, if somebody who hasn't, heard of you or, kind of want to know a little bit more information about you. Like, how did you kind of process this and begin writing this book?
Well, thank you first for the opportunity to speak with you and your audience. I've been through a number of setbacks in life, whether it was, early on, I dealt with childhood sexual abuse, a lot of bullying when I was much younger, the loss of my mother through 11 years of fighting breast cancer, then my own struggle early on at 53 with pancreatic cancer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and then the loss of my youngest child to suicide about 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, how do you get through that? One, I have a faith. I do believe that we're all here for a purpose, that each life is incredibly valuable, that each life is actually a thread in the fabric of the universe, and
Indeed.
that it has purpose. And so along my life through these challenges, I tend to see things in pictures. You say words, I hear your words and they get translated into pictures.
Mhm.
So I needed a way. I realized there were things that were repetitive in my life, little kind of observations of ways that I could continue to survive. Like, I could
Yeah.
get through something. And so for me, those became like metaphrases. I would write them down. And they became like metaphrases that represented a lot more, but they were a picture. Like I could see a picture in my mind, and that would remind me of the context around that phrase.
Mhm.
And so over the years, I wrote down 15 of them, and I got to 15 and I was like, anything else you come up with has to fall under one of the 15, just
Yeah.
shove it into one of the 15. And last year, I had a little time away from work, and I just decided to write them down in a book and kind of put a little context around them. And then, that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book is more, just things that people can do to survive and come back from setbacks.
Yeah.
Techniques, community, mindfulness, meditation, all these different things.
Sure.
And so the only reason I wrote them down was not to go back and revisit, individual occurrences, but to maybe connect with someone that could look at things that I believe I've observed that might be both adoptable, and adaptable to their unique situation. And, kind of my mantra is don't quit. And so, if you're in a state of despair, you're in a state of hopelessness, you're not sure where to go, just whatever you do, don't quit. And, maybe some of these things that I have observed will help at least one person not quit, at least not today.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because a lot of us, sometimes when we're going through certain experiences, I always say that, it's an experience in my life. It's not something that happened to me. It's an experience in my life. when we're going through these certain really heavy experiences, we definitely feel alone, and I think when we tell our stories, and that's why I wanted you so badly to for you to speak on this, is when we're going through these things, your voice will touch somebody for whatever you've gone through, and the experiences that you have, and that you're still here chatting about it and talking about it, and being vocal and being observant of, like, things are crappy sometimes, to be honest. They're crappy sometimes, but the great part about this community is that we all have a story to tell. We all have a story to tell, and it's important to tell our stories because it will help that one person, even if it's just ourselves. That's how I always say, I'm going to tell my
Yeah,
story
yeah,
and all the things that have I've gone through, all the modalities that I've tried to help me kind of figure this thing out called life, after these certain experiences. And maybe that's something that, somebody on the other side of the world hasn't really tried. And maybe that's something that they'll actually practice, because I think that's the biggest thing is practicing that modality. If it's journaling, if it's writing, if it's singing, whatever that thing is for you, that after you do it, you're like, okay, I can go on for the rest of the day today. And it's day by day.
yeah,
We don't want to go towards, like, okay, how am I going to get over that cliff over there? No, step by step, day by day, brick by brick, and it's every day is going to be different. Every day you're going to have, certain things that, kind of, and I don't want to say trigger, but kind of like shake you up. You're like, oh, I thought I was good with that. I thought I was over that, quote unquote, that part of my life, or that feeling, that emotion.
yeah. Well, I think, you talk about modalities. I was talking to someone yesterday, and the topic of forgiveness came up. And certainly I had to deal with forgiveness with my son.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with forgiveness, of the people who sexually abused me as a child. I've had to deal with forgiveness for, uh, I had a guy attempt to kill me once by beating my head in with a
Oh, jeez.
2-inch galvanized pipe when I was about 12 years old. And, there's a number of circumstances you go through where it is best for us to forgive someone for giving us that experience.
Yeah.
And but then the question becomes, like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I'm
Definitely.
not Jesus. Okay, like Jesus just like I forgive them because they don't know what they do. Well, I'm not quite that way. And to the idea around modalities, I think forgiveness is critical to our own healing, our own recovery
Indeed.
from these experiences, our own way to come back from the setback. And what I think I found, at least for me, was that one of the techniques that I was introduced to and used extensively was EMDR, because I found my
Okay.
son, and started there, and then it worked all the way back to much earlier in life. It's never good when the EMDR therapist is writing down traumatic events, that they want to deal with,
Yeah.
and it's on a legal page, and they turn the page, and they write again, and they turn the second page, and right, it's like
Definitely.
that's a lot,
So for
but we
those
started
who
out
don't
with it.
know, what is
Oh,
what is a EMDR exactly?
okay. EMDR, I I believe, um, the abbreviation stands for eye movement desensit desent EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and the R stands for something like rapidity, or it references,
Hmm.
like, I think, yeah, I know it's eye movement desensitization. I can't remember
Yeah,
what
and
the
we
R
can we
is.
can put it in the show links as well
Yeah.
too. Once we.
So, but the idea behind it is whenever you go through a traumatic event, that traumatic event becomes a memory through a neural path that is
Yeah.
created when that experience occurs. And then your brain may associate any other kind of traumatic experience. It goes, oh, I've
Mhm.
got a pathway for that. And it kind of runs that memory down that pathway
Oh,
of,
wow.
and so, uh, and this is a layman's point of view on it. Okay. So
Yeah. Yeah.
basically what happens is whenever you have a memory, something, like I said, Something reminds you. I can be driving down the road and I see a car that reminds me of my son's car pass me. I can see someone at a gas station from the back, has got the same haircut. It reminds me. Um, yeah, what happens is, and I'm sure you've experienced it, others have experienced it, before you can even respond to that thing, you've had this visceral emotional reaction to it. You've gotten upset really fast, or you just feel complete despair, or you start crying. You don't even have a chance to think about the memory. It just happens, and you have this emotional response. And the idea is that because it created this neural pathway, when you had that traumatic experience, um, as soon as you see something that reminds you of that traumatic experience, you relive the emotional response to that tragedy, like just
Yeah.
automatically. It's kind of like it's just automatic. And so EMDR, some therapists use these vibrating things that they put, pardon me, in your hand. You hold them between your thumb and first two fingers. Some use headsets. I had a therapist who used both. But the sound and the vibrations alternate, and then you remember the memory. You remember the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go through remembering the experience, because you are interfering with that memory with these, they don't actually know exactly how it works, this kind of theory behind it. Although it does work.
Yeah.
The memory, the emotions get replaced with the sensations and the sounds. It like separates the emotions. So then your memory is now processed through a new neural pathway that does not have the memory or does not have the emotions
Emotion
associated with it.
attached to it. Oh,
So
wow.
then when I see someone who, from the back, he looks like my son, I still have a reaction to it. I can become sad, but I don't hyperventilate. I don't break out into public tears. I don't like I can go through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can talk to you about his passing, which I could not do
Yeah.
really before, right? And so I wanted to I wanted to be able to think about many things in my life without having that emotional response. What I
Right.
observed later was that, it's hard. People say forgive people, forgive someone who's wronged you. But they don't really tell you how that happens. They're just like, forgive them. You'll be better off if you forgive them.
Yeah.
And that is true. But if you were being assaulted by someone and they were punching you in the face, in between punches, it's really hard to forgive them because they're punching you again, right?
Right.
Like you're still being assaulted. And I think the emotions from those memories, they get a grip. Like for me, they got a grip on me, right? And it's like their claws were into me. And so I struggled to forgive because every time I thought about the thing I wanted to forgive, I felt the emotion
The emotion
of
of
the
that.
thing that happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was like how do I forgive when it keeps punching me in the face? Like it's still hurting me. What I found for me was that, and I was unexpected, it wasn't planned. It's just that once I went through the EMDR and like the emotions became separated, and I could think about the situation without the emotion causing me to be angry or
Yeah.
fearful, or then I was able to forgive people because I didn't feel like in the process of forgiving, I was simultaneously being assaulted by this emotion going back to that moment in time, right? I could forgive my son because I did not have the emotion of the moment I opened the door and found him, right? Like
Yeah.
I could talk about that without that. And so I think there are, when you brought up modalities, I apologize for rambling about this, but
No,
when you brought
I
up,
love this. This is great. This is great.
so when you talked about like modalities, may not be for everybody, and I'm not saying it's a cure-all, but that's one that people may not have heard of, or they may have heard of it and not pursued it, or they may not have just connected, which I didn't until after, I was kind of going through it, that, it's not only a technique to help you deal with the trauma, it ends up being a technique that can help you find forgiveness, which is, I think, much better for us, you know.
Indeed. Yeah, and a lot of people, they don't recognize that sometimes forgiveness is not for the others. Forgiveness is for yourself. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
really it's such a powerful statement. And I never recognized that because I also had, my stepson had passed away through an overdose, and my husband found him, and a year later he took his life. So
Oh,
I
I'm so sorry.
understand that I understand it to the point of I know someone who has seen that and been through that and wasn't able to deal with that. But I think it's, it's funny because when I was going through different therapies and Reiki and all this stuff, they're like, you should look at forgiving. I'm like, forgiving what? Forgiving who? Forgiving him for doing what he did, like he for not being able to be here anymore. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And it took me
Yeah.
a really long time to really understand what forgiveness meant, to be able to do that. And finally, when I did, I was like, it was such an incredible, like, weight off the shoulders kind of feeling. It was very bizarre, but
Well, I think,
it's powerful. It really is
yeah.
powerful.
Well, I think it's a, in the case of someone taking their life, there is absolutely this. I don't know that this is one of those things where I kind of rely on the creator to, like he did for Moses. It's like, hey, you're going to go do this thing. And Moses is like, but I got a stutter. I'm not really a talker. And he's like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And
Yeah.
that's the way I kind of look at this, right? Like what I'm about to say is my guess is will not resonate with most people who might have suicidal ideation. But I kind of count on the creator to work it out,
Yeah.
find a way where it needs to go. I think people who take their life, in the case of my son, I believe that he thought, because we had known, he told us at 9 years of age that he was going to end his life.
Oh, wow.
And he was 18 when he took his life. He was not connected to the internet. He didn't know anybody who had taken their own life. He didn't know anybody who knew anybody who had taken their own life that he knew of. And when I asked him, then why he would even consider that, like, first of all, how the hell do you even know that? At
Right.
least that when he was 9 years old, that would have been like 2010 or something like that, maybe 2012. So how the hell did he know what
Yeah.
suicide was? And he said that, life is, he had determined, he was a very old soul, but he said that, and too intelligent for his own good,
Yeah.
I think, because I think people look at it and they're intelligent enough to see that life is going to be difficult and then
Hmm.
you're going to die. So why don't we just skip all that difficulty? That was kind of my son's take on this. It seems to be the most logical thing, right?
Yeah.
He thought my view of that life was wonderful, in spite of the tragedies or the traumas that we should stay because we're a thread in the universe. Like that's our we have a responsibility, and
Right.
that didn't resonate with him. But what I believe happened to him was the pain became so great uh, that I believe he thought if he ended his life, the pain would go away,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go away. The pain remains, and it's like a cancer. It infects the people who love that person. It infects the people who knew that person, and
Yeah.
it will continue to infect people who never knew that person but hear the story about
Yeah.
that person. And I would suggest to someone who's having suicidal ideations that, and in that moment of despair, you may have no thought of anyone else in the world,
Hmm.
but just know that in your moment of despair, you're not actually taking the pain with you. That pain is now going to last and may last for generations, right? Like
Yeah.
now everybody left behind has to do a lot of work to keep that pain from moving on. And so anyway, I think
No,
that
and I really like that you said that because I never really thought about it that way, even though it is 1,000% true. Like I never thought about it that way. Like, yes, you're in a lot of pain, but that pain remains. And I never thought about it that way.
I think it's like it doesn't get worse for them, but I don't believe my son, if he could have grasped what the ramifications, the pain ramifications would be from his actions, I really believe that he would have stayed and what I would offer people to consider is stay and confront the pain, lessen the pain, possibly even remove the pain. And then what you would pass forward to generations is perseverance, resilience,
Mhm.
determination, like all those things that future generations need, right? When they run into their setbacks and their
Definitely.
experiences. And so, maybe one person will hear that. I suspect many will just say, whatever, I'm not worried about everybody else right now. I'm worried about
Right.
myself. But
Right.
maybe there's one person who will think, it would be better if I stayed and did, some type of active approach to removing the pain, whether that's cognitive therapy, whether that's EMDR, whether that's, you know, whatever technique or
Yeah.
modality. It is stay and remove the pain. Then what you will leave behind is a tremendous legacy.
For sure. And I think that's why it was so important for me to start this podcast, because a lot of people don't know about cognitive therapy, don't know about EMDR, don't know about, different types of modalities out there that are available, because a lot of people aren't really talking about it, people who are spiritual or whatever, they go to Reiki, they go to meditation and all that stuff, but a lot of people are like, what is meditation? Like, what is Reiki? What is this? What is that? What is Qigong? Like all these different types of modalities and stuff like that are available that we're not talking about, because therapy at first, for me at least, traditional quote unquote therapy, I think it was too much for, like, the group therapy and stuff for people who have lost a partner or who have lost
Yeah.
a child. It was really just, it was overwhelming, to be honest. I was
Oh,
like, I don't think
100%.
I need to be here. Like, I'm hearing all these stories, and I was literally in bed for 2 days after a group section, and then going to a therapist who honestly wasn't really aware of how to deal with somebody who had, lost a stepson with addiction, lost a husband to suicide and all this stuff. And I think it's really, really important for us to seek out people that are going to, number one, make us feel, in a sense, comfortable, but be able to talk about the things and kind of give us, they're not going to cure things. I know that for sure. Therapy is not a curing thing, but it's a sounding board. You know what I mean? It's a sounding board to be able to move through things, work through things. Um, whatever that thing is for you, whatever modality of healing that is for you, like let's look at that. Let's look at EMDR. Let's look at cognitive. Let's look at I think the other one, it starts with a T. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. I know I know
Yeah,
what you're talking
yeah.
about. I can't remember it either, but I know
I
what you're
can't
talking about.
either,
Yeah.
but those kinds of things. And also to the people who are actually doing these types of modalities of healing, make it accessible. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not cheap, and for
No,
the
it's
people
not.
who
Yeah.
don't have the means to be able to do that, who really do need the help, let's work on that. I don't know how that works. This is something that I've been thinking about for a really long time. I'm very fortunate to be on different boards and stuff like that, and this is something that I bring up all the time. I'm like, make it accessible. Like, you can donate money all the time and send the kids wherever, but like, let's figure out something to help, a majority of these kids, because I deal with kids who deal with teen, like, suicidal ideations.
Hmm.
um, let's help them get access to these different modalities, whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
And I mean, and there's a lot in what you just said because it's all true. Uh, there is a there is a well, first of all, let me go to the energy stuff because you mentioned Reiki. When I was going through, and I still do actually. When I was going through the cancer, I began doing acupuncture, and there were some
Mhm.
some medical reasons for that, and guided imagery, and then I ended up in doing Reiki, which I still do. I still do acupuncture every other week. I still do uh, guided imagery or even hypnotherapy pretty regularly. I just spent a year going through that. Um, there's a number of things that are out there. You're right. Most of those therapies are people who are in private practice, and they're trying to earn a living too, and so it's
For sure.
not covered by insurance a lot of times, and so you got to find a way. I do hope that we can find the means to help people, because I think those therapies apply especially to people who want to not be in that state of despair,
Yeah.
but they just can't find a way out, can be really helpful. Um, but at least people should check into it. There are practitioners who will help you. They won't just turn their back on somebody who's
Right.
in that situation. It is important to find the right therapist. I was blessed to find right after my son's passing to find two really good. I mean, we were blessed to know both of these women. One of them who brought, because I have religious beliefs, and
Hmm.
I don't even know how I found her, but it was just such a match for my wife and I. Her father's pastor of an AME church, and so she had lost someone, and it was just like this. And so she approached it with just kind of this. Still makes me emotional. Just this tremendous. Uh, she understood our beliefs, and she understood the process. So it's true.
Yeah.
It was. She was just. She really, in many ways, kind of saved us in those first few months. And then we got introduced to EMDR and had a fantastic experience there. But prior to that, I had met therapists and things did not work out well. Right, like
Hmm.
they would bring my son's psychiatrist did not work out well,
Yeah.
obviously. And so I did not realize back then the importance. I just thought psychiatrist,
Right.
therapist,
And
they
that's,
must know what
yeah,
they're doing, right? And
correct.
it turns
Correct.
out most of them don't know what they're doing. You got to be really selective, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot that goes into that. And looking back on it, there are decisions. I don't know if it would have affected anything, but there are decisions I would have made in saying, you know what, this just isn't working out. We're moving on. Um,
Yeah.
so you
Because
do
we
have to
don't
be
know.
selective there.
That's the whole thing.
You don't
We
know.
don't know.
Yeah,
We go, okay, this, after, a crazy event that happens in my life, I got to go to a therapist. And it's not like, oh, I got to go to a therapist who specializes in XYZ, because you're not thinking that way. You're
right,
not
right,
that you're just, I need help. Like that's it. I need help,
right.
therapist. Okay, let me just go.
Well, and
And
like this first lady we met, like her thing was grief. That
mhm,
was her therapy. You know,
mhm.
I don't do a lot of that. She didn't do EMDR. She didn't do that. She's like, I'm here for you when it hits the fan. I'll say it that way. When it
Yeah.
hits the fan, I'm here for you. That's my specialty. And I think that was just like, we just got fortunate. Like I still don't remember how we got in touch with her, but it was um, if it had not been her, I don't know. I don't know how everything
Yeah.
would have worked out, right? But like that was her thing. Like she had a passion for it, she had compassion for it, she had empathy for it, and she just had a way of talking to you that would back you off the ledge, that would
Yeah.
say, and just help. And so it's critical that you find that you just don't talk to anybody. And
Yeah.
a lot of your friends and family don't know what the hell to say either, right? And so
Oh
whatever they
no.
say, it's like sometimes it can be like the worst thing, like it's like time heals all wounds. It's like
Yeah.
no, there's some
No.
that it just absolutely will not heal.
Yeah.
Like let's just be honest about it. Okay, this
Yeah,
wound is
because
never going to
we
heal.
just don't know what to say, we think
Yeah,
we're being, compassionate and empathetic and stuff. And sometimes, like, even when my husband passed away, they're like, "Oh, you're young, you'll find somebody else." I'm like, "I'm
right.
sorry, what?"
Yeah. Well, my wife used to get really pissed off about it, because and people would say that, and I would have to say, look, because I had a number of family members pass away, the children that passed away, and from various things.
Mhm.
And so it's like, hey, just don't get hooked up on that, because forgive them for they know not what they do. Okay, like
Yeah,
they're
indeed.
doing they don't know what to say, so they're saying something, and you just have to let it go, because
Yeah.
To be honest with them, it's like there's certain people I wouldn't talk about, and they're like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, "It's too heavy. Like if I tell you, you're going to respond because it's so heavy. You're going to feel like you need to, and I'm pretty sure you're going to say the wrong thing. So it's just
Correct.
better if I
Yeah.
don't tell you, right? Like it helps me and you get along better because you're just. I know what you're going to do. It's going to be with the best of intentions. It's going to be absolutely the wrong damn thing to say.
The wrong thing.
Um,
Exactly.
and when you talked about it's a great conversation. I thought, but at least it is for me. When you talked about like the groups, you know, um, there are two things. There's this lady, I read her book, and I heard her speak one time. Trying to remember her name now. She's very popular. But she said that she met a lady one time who had childhood sexual abuse, and she was in a group, you know, survivors of childhood sexual abuse,
Mhm.
and that she had been in it for like a number of years. And basically, the story was that she had met a couple of people, and she was at a place where she was with this woman, and the woman just really acted inappropriately. And she felt like it was because she was constantly in that group for so many years. Like some of these groups, you go in and you're supposed to come out, right?
Right.
Like you're not supposed to just live there. And so
Correct.
I would say,
Yeah.
like somebody who's been through these kinds of events, if you're in a support group, my experience has been, I'm not a doctor, I'm not recommending, I'm just saying, um, it was certainly comforting for about a month or so for us to kind of know that there were other people, like we weren't alone.
Yeah.
But then it became really depressing to know that there were so many other people making us not alone.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I can't be around all this. Like like you said, it's
It's
overwhelming. My wife
overwhelming.
got into
Yeah.
this Facebook group for people, parents who had lost a child to suicide, and I was just like, you got to get out of Facebook group because it was one thing to know, wow, there are other people that are sharing stories that are like us, but not one. And then on about day three, it was like, hey, they're admitting way too many people here every day. Okay,
Yeah.
like every day, new parents were coming into that group, and it was like I can't take on the pain of all they're going through. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where like I talk. It's like somebody's ending your own life will extend to people that you never knew. The pain will extend out, and just being in that group, like the pain of their loss. I don't know their child. I don't
Yeah.
even know them. Literally, it's a Facebook group. I don't even know where you are, and that pain came through that group and would affect me
Hmm.
and would affect my wife. And it's like, hey, we've got to get out of that. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. We thought there were way too many. It's obvious there are way too many. Like, but the pain comes. So I would just say, like, if you're in a group, and we not just that we were in a local group, sadly, but there came a time when, and the woman who ran that group still stays in touch with my wife, another wonderful human being. Um, it's funny how these things are. We would probably agree on nothing. And
Hmm.
yet I could not have more respect for this woman, right?
Yeah.
Like just her, just the yeah. Some people are just called, okay, and
And I also
they're
think,
called to really
those,
difficult things.
yeah. Yeah. And those spaces are, like you said, I think they're for that time that you need it.
Right.
The Facebook
And you got
group,
to be
the
strong
group
enough to look
therapy.
at it and say
And
the time has
correct.
come, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to stay there,
Yeah.
because it is kind of comforting in a
Yeah. There's
strange way.
comfort in the discomfort of it all. Yeah, for
Right,
sure.
right.
For sure.
So, my recommendation would be, hey, find the time. But at some point, what it's doing is it's kind of anchoring you in that experience, right?
Yeah.
And I think then you run the risk of, somebody said, well, what is being stuck? And I'm like, I don't know, but I know it when I feel it. Like, and
Hmm.
I don't want to be stuck. And so I do think you have to, it is better for one to move through these things,
Definitely.
and even the groups, because they can, while they keep you buoyant for a while, at some point they can become an anchor, and
Hmm.
then you get stuck there. So
For
yeah, when you
sure.
brought up groups, I just reminded me of those experiences.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. Now, how did you come to writing this book? I mean, I've tried to write. It's not easy. So
I'm not a
how did
writer.
that, yeah, how
I'm
did
not a
this come
writer. Like
about?
that's not my thing. So it started with the cancer, because I'm in the category of less than 1%. I'm almost this August will be 7 years. Just got I get blood work done every 30 days because I'm still
Yeah.
in a trial at the University of Pennsylvania. And I just got my blood work today back for my 1 month. Everything's great.
That's
I'm still
awesome.
on some medication. But when I was and today I have no visible sign of disease. So like if somebody didn't know, they took a CT scan of my body, they would never know that I had. Although I will kind of forever be. I still have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Like
Hmm.
they don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
My body still produces the cells and the things. Anyway, my general physician, who really quarterbacked my time through this and still does,
Good.
um, at some point he goes, man, you should really write a book. Like if and he wanted me to talk about like the integrative medical medicine approach, like the tying of Eastern medicine and Western medicine and supplements and minerals and on-label and off-label medications
Yeah.
and using acupuncture and Reiki and guided imagery. Like, he wanted me to go through all that. Um, and so I had continued to work through the cancer. I'd worked had a couple weeks off, but basically worked through my son's passing and everything that did, the damage that did to my three remaining children, my wife, who I almost lost.
Of course.
We almost lost her to suicide.
Oh, geez.
Not
Yeah.
unsimilar to your husband, right? It's like the impact of that spreads, and
Yeah.
so she became so in such a state of despair that I called her one day. I just had this feeling, and maybe hypervigilance, but I called her, and she was right on the verge of making that decision. And
Wow.
our family physician had told me, he's like, whatever happens, I don't want to lose another one. So because he actually had a relationship with my son, and it had, really impacted him. And I said, look, we need to go straight to his office. I will call him. And I did. And he made room, got her in, and was
Yeah.
able. And then her shift kind of started there. And uh, he put her on a program where he had to talk to her every week, standing appointment every week. He would make sure, like we're not losing you to.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
there's, that happens. And so work helped get through all that. It was very difficult on the three remaining children. Everybody's much better now, 4 years in, but boy, there were some rough times in there. People
Yeah,
writing
it's
pain
definitely
and
a club you don't want to be a part of, you know.
no,
It's
no.
it's 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 very difficult for others to understand unless you've gone through it, like losing a parent, losing a spouse, losing a child. It is something that unless you've experienced it yourself, like it is very difficult to understand, to acknowledge and to kind of like, oh wow, that's crazy. Like I didn't know that was that there's it's a weird connection. I don't know how to
Oh yeah,
explain it, you
yeah.
know?
No, no, you can't really explain it, but it's kind of like that Supreme Court justice said one time about pornography. They asked him like, "How do you know what it is?" He goes, "I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it."
Yeah,
And it's kind of like I can't explain it, but you know it when you see it. It's like, yeah, we know that
definitely.
this is like somebody else not only understands, but they comprehend what we're kind of going through. I had a guy, I still have a guy who reports to me at work, and he lost his wife to cancer, went through that. And we used to spend, through those first months, probably the first year we still do spend some time talking about it, mainly me listening. Um,
Yeah.
because he knows while my situation is different than his, and I haven't lost my spouse, and so I don't want to um, I never say, well, let me tell you it's like this because it's not. His loss is different.
Yeah.
But I think he felt like and recognized that, that I was one of the people who would not say the stupid thing. I was
Right.
not one of the people saying I would just sit and listen and be like, hey, you know what, man, that's the way you feel is absolutely normal. You're not going crazy, you
Yeah.
know. And while you will survive this, it will be painful, and but you're going to survive it, you know, whether you like it,
Yeah.
whether you want to or not right now, you're going
For
to.
sure. For sure.
And, you know, but to your point, like if you've been through it, um, then I think there is kind of like this unspoken connection. We moved into a new home about 3 years ago, and a lady across the street came over. We noticed like she would look over, she would wave, she was across the street.
Uh-huh.
And then one day she comes over to your point, right? Like how there's just this connect, like she comes
Yeah.
over and she says, she introduced herself and she said, she's talking to my wife. She says, I just feel like we have a connection. And my wife's like, okay. And she goes,
Right.
and she goes, it's going to sound like a strange question, but have you lost a child? And my wife just
Yes.
like, first shock, taken aback, tears well up. And she's like, why are you asking me? And she goes, I've lost a child.
Holy cow.
And I just had
Wow.
a feeling when I saw you.
Wow.
And so I think there is kind of like that connection, like there's this thing. And it turns out that lady was really struggling. It'd been several years that she was really struggling.
Wow.
And so they were able to, they've been able to talk and not a lot. It's almost like there's this unspoken thing that's kind of
Yeah,
supportive between them,
definitely.
right? Yeah, but it is one of those. I just remember that it is one of those kind of unspoken things. But so anyway, I worked, and eventually it just all caught up with me mentally. It just all caught up with me,
Hmm.
and I done the therapy thing and I've done all this stuff, but I became exhausted, and I realized that I was putting too many of my own emotions on other situations in life. Like our company would, like a lot of companies, has had layoffs, and
Yeah.
I would have to lay people off. And I caught myself thinking, the company's committing suicide, like me. And I'm like, man, no, it's not. Like, it's not. Where the hell, how the hell did you connect? Like, and then it'd be
Yeah.
like the thought would come to my mind. It's like, well, I've already lost one thing that I love. And I really do love the company. I really like working for the company I work for. It's a wonderful place. But I was associating like business practices
Wow.
with this death thing, and I was like, okay, enough's enough. You're obviously in a bad mental place. So I called my general physician. I said, hey, man, that we got this thing at work, like this leave of absence thing. I don't know how it works, but they say you gotta. So we talked through it. And he goes, well, you have had, I've been telling you for a while, like you're really struggling with this stuff. So I ended up, I ended up taking 90 days from work.
Mhm.
And it was probably one of the smartest things I did, because then I
And
could
I love
actually
that your
like,
company does that. Not a lot of companies do that. That's really
they
fantastic.
don't. I'm very blessed, and
Yeah.
so, and that was one of the things. Like it was like, well, because at first I was like, well, I don't want to do that. That kind of felt like giving in to me, you know. Um, and then I thought, well, I've been with the company like 21 years, and I thought, well,
Yeah.
I've been paying for this benefit.
Yeah.
I've been contributing to it for 21 years. The insurance companies never had to pay out on this benefit. You
Hmm.
know, there's no shame in taking the benefit. So anyway, I talked myself into it. The doctor talked me into it. He's like, yeah, you.
Good.
So I took it, and it absolutely reset me mentally and helped me physically. I mean, I still have some challenges with like the side effects of the cancer treatments and stuff.
Hmm.
But anyway, during that time, like the first 30 days, I was like, why did I even take time for 3 weeks? I said, why did I even take time off? I'm fine. And then like one day I couldn't get out of bed, and I was like, actually, you're not fine. You're exhausted. Like it finally
Definitely.
like dawned on me. It's like, wow, you're literally mentally. I wasn't even physically exhausted. I was just mentally
Finally.
like
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, if that's the case, we're gonna do a different therapy. Like uh, I'd done guided imagery through chemo, and I remember like in acupuncture and guided imagery, I would find this place of just like this very calm, just like this ultimate peaceful place. And I've never experienced it before in my life.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, if there's one thing I would love to feel again, it was those moments in guided imagery where I was just completely peaceful, like the world just melted away. When we were about cancer, when we were about anything, it was wonderful. And
Yeah.
so I thought, well, I wonder if there's like a hypnotherapy or something that would, like I could just go someplace and I could find that peaceful place again. So I found a place that does hypnotherapy, and so I started to pursue that. And somewhere along the way, I was like, well, I'm getting ready to go back to work, but I'm kind of bored, you know. And I thought, well, they a couple people have been on me about writing a book, but I'm not a writer. I don't know anything about writing. And so I sat down with this idea, and eventually I came to the idea. It's like, well, I don't want to relive everything, but I've written down these 15, what I call core beliefs, like these things that I really hold
Yeah.
on to. Well, maybe I'll just write those down. And so it started out with, I would basically take the 15 core beliefs and then I'd go to like an AI tool and I'd be like, this is what each one means. Write a paragraph on that. And
Yeah.
it would write a paragraph poorly, but I would look at it and then I would change it around and then I would start writing a little bit more. And one thing led to another. I kind of had what I thought was a manuscript.
Yeah.
So I went to Upwork and got a quote from an editor. She had really high reviews and she was a little more expensive than everybody else. But I was like, I'm just going to kind of go all in. I kind of feel like I should do this. I'm never going to have time to do it again. You're
Yeah.
not a writer, but you've gotten this far. You got a manuscript. Give it to her and see what she can do. And so she looked at it. She gave me a quote, sent her the manuscript. And she messaged me and said, hey, we got to revisit the quote because I read your manuscript and it needs a lot more work. You're right. You're not a writer. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cold, but we're in it now. So let's
Fair.
go through it.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, fair. It was
Got
a
it.
fair assessment. I
Yeah.
couldn't really argue with it. I'm like, yeah, I kind of thought I told you. Um, and so she reworked it and we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on it. And I don't really know, Stephanie, at some point it was just done. And and the editor contributes a lot, because they're like, okay, that thought doesn't, I don't know how you thought those two things were connected. They're not. It needs to go in this other place, and you need to add a chapter on this, and But
Hmm.
eventually, you kind of like, she's like, I think this is good as it's going to get. Like, I think we're good. And I
Yeah.
said, okay. And so then I was like, well, what do I do now? She's like, well, go on Fiverr and find somebody who can do book covers. Okay, go on Fiverr. So I found somebody to do a book cover, and next thing, and then I signed up for like this course somebody had on how to publish a book. I didn't know what to do with
Yeah.
it. And so next thing it's on Amazon. And then from there, I was just kind of sat around for a little while. And then people started asking me to kind of tell the story a little bit, well, how'd you do that? And so that's kind of how like I ended up here. It's just like, well, I got this book. I'm not really trying to sell books, but maybe there's something in those core beliefs or the examples that I wrote down. I kind of felt like there was a reason to write them down. I don't know why or what the real purpose of it is, but if telling these stories and being transparent about the impact
Thousand. Yeah.
will, because I don't like doing it in a way. I don't want to do anything in a way that somebody goes, oh, well, he's just like it kind of giving them the cherry picked version of it. It's like, no,
Hmm.
no, no, it all sucks. It's going to suck really bad.
Yeah. A
Okay. It's
thousand
going to suck
percent.
really,
Yeah.
really bad. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I love because I'm the same way. I'm like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, and yeah, I'm smiling. I'm smiling through the toughest parts of my life, absolutely. And there are days that I don't want to get out of bed. There are days that I don't want to talk to anybody. There are
100%.
days that I don't want to get on the mic. I
I'm
don't
in the
want to
car and I
talk.
just start
Yeah,
crying,
yeah,
and it's like,
yeah,
man, I don't want to look at the car beside me because I got tears streaming down my face. And, and it's
yeah.
like, I don't even know. Like I was just driving down the road and I saw I don't know, a light change from red to yellow and yellow reminded me of this other thing. And that reminded me of Heston. And the next thing I
Hmm.
know, I'm shedding a tear, and it's like, yeah, that's going to happen. That's
It's gonna happen,
absolutely going to happen.
1000%.
And you know what? You will survive it. If you work to set your mind forward. Um, Moving forward is not leaving them behind. They come with us.
Correct.
But
Yes.
but we have to make a choice. You're either going to stay with them or they're going to come with us.
Yeah.
And I
I love
think
that you
it's
said that. That is awesome. Yeah,
well,
because it's
and
true.
because I really believe it's like that's what I've seen, right? It's like, well,
Yeah,
it becomes really look. I don't want him to be gone, so I want to be with him.
yeah,
but then at some point, it's like, if I stay here with you, like I'll be ruined. Like I have no chance. So, and I know it's kind of visual, but that, like I said, that's what I'm kind of like, you need to get up and come with me. Like I've
Mhm.
got to move forward. And so I'm
Yeah.
not leaving you, you know, you're going to come with me.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's, when people say
It's a
don't get
beautiful way to
stuck.
think about it, It's a really beautiful way to think about it because they're never going to be gone. Physically,
No,
yes, they're gone, but their spirit, their energy, their vibration is always going to be with us.
yeah.
And
And
we have to move through those emotions and move like you said, move forward. And some days there's a baby step and some days it's a big giant leap, and that's okay. Whatever that day comes, as long as we're moving through those emotions and moving forward, we're doing good. We're doing good by them.
that's a win, Stephanie. That's a
Yeah,
win. And like, I think, people, when we're going through these things, uh, man, do not discount a win. Okay. If you got out of
for
bed
sure.
today and you took a shower, forget the
Yeah,
shower. You got out of
you
bed
got out of
today.
bed. Yeah,
That's a win. Okay.
yeah.
You
Fuck
you
yeah.
made something to eat or you drove someplace and got something to eat. That's a win today.
Mm-hmm.
Take the win. Um,
Yeah,
because then
for sure.
you can build on the wins,
Yep,
right?
a thousand
And I
percent.
think that's, you mentioned, something just crossed my mind when you said, their vibrations will be with us. If we stay with them in that moment, that is a very low vibration. It's a
Uh-huh.
very low vibration. And that is not a good place.
Yeah,
I would rather bring them along to a better vibration. I will bring their memory along with me and bring them to, I will move to a higher vibration and bring them with me.
absolutely.
I'm not going to stay in that low vibration. And that is, ultimately, that is a choice that we can make, right? Like
Yeah.
that, as a matter of fact, whether we intend to or not, we will make that choice. We will
Hmm.
decide whether we think we're making or not to stay with them in that low vibration, or we will make a choice. And that choice, after this happened, I was, one of my core beliefs is always fall forward. And what I kind of mean by that is, it, excuse me, in a lot of ways it's mental, but again, keep in mind I'm kind of a visual person, right? So
Yeah.
when these things happen, like in this case, whether it was the cancer or earlier in my life with sexual abuse or bullying, or especially with my son, the cancer and my son were two experiences where um, I really felt physically knocked backwards. Like I felt like I was knocked back, not like just knocked down, but like a turtle on the back on its shell. Like I was
Yeah.
just, and what kind of came to me was, you watch a turtle and all it's doing is struggling to get itself righted, right? Like it never lays on the back on its shell and it stays there. It's constantly
Right.
struggling to get righted. And I thought, well, that's what we as humans need to do. We need to struggle to get righted. And part of getting righted is facing forward. So
Hmm.
if you get hit hard enough, do your best to fall forward. So at least you're mentally back facing down the path, okay, that you were on. If
Yeah.
you get knocked backwards, do your best to mentally turn yourself around, get righted, and get your mind back on the path. Um, and so, because if you can do that, for me, and then we go back to like take the small wins. There were days where there was no taking steps. I felt like I was
Yeah.
laying flat on my face and my hands were outstretched, and the most I could do was claw my way forward, like sink my fingers into the mud and the muck and just claw my way forward. And I might only move a millimeter that day, but
Yeah.
I moved a millimeter. And then I would take my feet at some point. I got enough energy to push with my toes, and so I would claw with my hands and push with, and I might move 2 millimeters that day. And then some days it felt like I was clawing my way uphill, so I'd slide backwards some, and I had to start over again.
Yeah.
And eventually, I was able to get on my knees, you know, and then I would crawl. And then I'm not running. I'm still walking, bent over and hobbling, but I
Hmm.
am upright.
You're
And
upright. Yeah.
I'm upright.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to people is don't knock yourself down. Don't think lesser of yourself because all you can do today is crawl forward.
Correct.
That's a big win.
Hmm.
Give yourself some credit for that and just stay on the path.
And allow yourself the grace, it's
Absolutely.
we don't give ourselves enough grace, to think that, getting out of bed or waking up today is a win, a lot of people, when I'm not feeling great and I don't want to talk about anything, they're like, how you doing? I go, I woke up today, so I'm doing really good.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
same thing. People say, "How you doing today?" And I'm like, "I'm not dead yet.
yeah,
I'm not dead yet." And it's like they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Hey, that's a win right now.
it's a
Okay,
win. Yeah,
that's a win." So,
totally.
yeah, and like I think there's a lot of courage in that people don't give themselves credit for. When you're so depressed and in despair, and you can find the courage to sit yourself up on the edge of the bed and put your feet on the floor and
Yeah.
stand up. That is a courageous act.
Hmm.
And be proud of that. Okay. And
Definitely.
then if you can take a step forward, you know, into your bathroom and you can turn the shower on. I don't care if you get in the shower, you can turn it
Yeah.
on. That's courageous. Okay. Because everything in your being will tell you not to do any of those things.
Hmm.
Just stay in bed. Another thing I do want to mention is like the energy practices, the Reiki, acupuncture, guided imagery, meditation. My mother was, she read her Bible and prayed,
Hmm.
in a disciplined fashion. All of those things, I think, um, we have to be very careful not to listen to the loud voice.
Yeah.
Right? The loud voice is never, again, in my belief system, the way God created the universe, He speaks in something. The universe will speak, like your intuition, it will come to you.
For sure.
That voice is always like that still small voice. It's never like the big loud voice that's telling you how bad things are and you should just stay in bed and this life isn't worth it and you're doing so poorly today and you're not even making the progress. You went to that grief group, and look at how much better they're doing than you're doing.
The comparison.
That's not the
Yeah.
voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's that loud, negative, almost evil voice that's telling you all the wrong things. And then if you can use that quiet time, if you can, because you got to get quiet to hear that small voice, right?
For
Because it's the
sure.
one that's going to tell you, no, you're doing great. You're doing great. You're going to make it. You know, yeah, it was you fought against the loud voice and got out of bed today. That's a win. Like, but it's
Hmm.
always that small voice that says that. And I think it's super important that we listen to the quiet voice,
For sure.
because and the only way to hear it is for you to quiet yourself so that it can be encouraging to you. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, I just want to throw that in because there's kind of a reason why, even if it's whatever your mechanism is. Because I think my grandmother, this would have been like in the 1930s. Okay, she had six children. Her youngest one she lost. He wasn't a year old, but she lost him. And I remembered her telling me one time that when she lost him, uh, the world went gray. Everything was black and white. Like she
Yeah.
literally, she would say, "No, literally, I could not. Everything I looked at was black and white. It was just gray." That's visually what I saw.
Hmm.
And she was a religious woman, and so she read her Bible and she prayed and she did her way. What she was expressing to me was that one day she woke up and she saw color again. She opened her eyes and she saw color again. It wasn't black
Hmm.
and white. And after my son's passing, I remembered that I hadn't really remembered it, until after that. And I was like, well, if I just keep, if I just don't get stuck, if I just don't quit, one day there will be color again. And it may not be the whole day, it may
Yeah.
just be little flashes of the day, but I will start to see color again. And for me, that was metaphorical. I didn't have that like visual grayscale that
Actual
she had,
vision.
but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
but metaphorically, it was like, yeah, the world was kind of dark. It was gray.
Of course.
Um,
Of course. Yeah.
yeah, and I would just encourage people, you know, you may feel everything is dark now, but if you don't quit, if you persist, there will come a day when you will start to see color again.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you so much, Andy. I mean, thank you for speaking with me, for your vulnerability, for sharing your story. It really, really means a lot. And I wanted, tell people also, where can they find you if they want to read your book, they want to get more information on you and what you're doing?
Yeah, if for the book, you can go to Amazon and just search for Andy Campbell, like the soup with a P and a B. And it should be like the first search result will be the book. But my website is askandycampbell.com. You can sign up there, but all my cancer information's there, and we're kind of retooling it right now to include these other topics. I think I'm now, at 4 years, I'm ready to add that, that portion of my life to the website, that portion of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find me at askandycampbell.com, and you can find the book on Amazon. Just search for my name.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And big love and big hugs to your wife and your kids from me, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will let them know. And I
Yes.
want to tell you the gratitude is all mine. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to have the conversation and to share with you.
Thank